Chapter 2, Navigating the Tapestry of Intimacy. The complexities of intimate relationships weave a multi-layered tapestry that intersects individual narratives, societal perceptions, and the commercialization of intimacy. We explore the strands that make up our relationships as we untangle this tapestry, looking closely at the connections and patterns that influence how we perceive intimacy. Societal stitching, beauty's distorted mirror. The societal mirror, which reflects beauty standards, commonly warps people's perceptions of beauty and gives women in particular an unfairly biased view. This distorted reflection establishes a value hierarchy predicated on outward appearance, leading to unequal treatment and prejudiced interactions in many areas of life, particularly romantic relationships. Fundamentally, this social construction serves to both create and maintain the molds that shape how people are viewed and treated. These molds, which are shaped by unreal beauty standards, create unreachable standards and fuel insecurities, self-doubt, and the never-ending quest for an idealized appearance. For women, this warped mirror frequently acts as a prism through which their physical attractiveness is considered more highly than their character or skills. It creates a path where opportunities and social acceptance appear to depend on meeting these restrictive requirements. The effect extends beyond a person's perception of themselves. It distorts social conventions and eats away at the foundation of relationships. These prejudices permeate social interactions, professional settings, and dating environments, creating a culture where appearances are more important than content. This, in turn, creates the conditions for a host of psychological fallout, such as low self-esteem, problems with body image, and an internalized conviction that fulfilling these unattainable norms is essential. The psychological toll that these differences take is substantial. It creates a tension between real relationships and superficial evaluations, posing serious concerns about the ethics and relevance of societal norms in defining personal relationships. This investigation explores the psychological turmoil these differences cause in people, questioning the very basis of societal standards of attractiveness. It makes one reflect on the sincerity of relationships based on such skewed viewpoints and questions the ethics of a culture that supports these false representations. Individual threads, trauma, norms, and choices. Individual narratives emerge within the fabric of societal norms, each one woven with strands of personal experiences, resiliency in the face of trauma, and the passionate search for true connections. These stories deeply intertwine the decisions people make, frequently deviating from the well-trod routes set forth by societal norms. These stories are centered around themes of bravery, resiliency, and the desire for genuine connections. Their presence serves as evidence of the human spirit's defiance against the constraints imposed by social structures. These narratives, which are embedded in the Book of Relationships, depict journeys that defy social norms and assumptions while weaving a tapestry of diversity. People navigate through the labyrinth of social norms and expectations amid these personal chronicles, which are frequently shaped by life experiences that leave lasting impressions. Trauma is a vital thread that weaves through the larger fabric of societal constructs, regardless of the source, past relationships, prejudices in society, or personal struggles. These unique stories go beyond the accepted norms and are laced with themes of resiliency, self-discovery, and healing. They present a plethora of relationships that reject social norms and choose less traveled paths that hold the potential to yield genuine and meaningful connections. These stories, diverse in their nature and origin, shed light on relationships that challenge societal paradigms, embracing differences, unconventional choices, and a quest for genuine intimacy. They depict a patchwork of human experiences, with every narrative serving as a distinct brushstroke that adds vivid colors to the relationship canvas that goes beyond social conventions. Commercializing intimacy, a market of emotions. The commercialization of intimacy represents a profound change in the way we view and perceive the relationships that make us who we are. Intimacy, which was once seen as a sacred and intensely personal relationship, has now entered the world of business dealings. Once considered invaluable, emotions are now commodities in a market that affects the structure of our relationships as a whole. Our collective consciousness has been influenced by this shift from the sacred to the transactional, which has changed how we perceive intimacy and connections. Our beliefs, actions, and the complex emotional landscape of our relationships have all been significantly impacted by the commercialization of intimacy. This shift has revealed complex effects that affect how we perceive relationships and have created a market where intimacy is bought, sold, and traded. This market is influenced by supply and demand dynamics, marketing tactics, and economic principles. Genuine emotions and true bonds are no longer the only things that sustain connections in this marketplace of emotions. Market forces and transactional dynamics, i.e., how will I gain from this, also play a significant role. Previously regarded as sacred and intimate, relationships now operate in a system where their value is determined by economic considerations. This change is exemplified, for example, by the rise of platforms that enable transactional relationships, such as sugar baby dynamics. Here, friendship is frequently traded for cash assistance, making it difficult to distinguish between real emotional relationships and transactional interactions. The effects of this commodification are clearly visible in how people view intimacy. Genuineness and emotional depth are forced to submit to the desire for transactional gains. This dynamic shapes people's behaviors and their perceptions of and interactions in relationships. It has made the notion that intimacy can be measured commonplace, fostering a mentality in which the value of emotional connections is determined by external factors rather than the intensity of the feeling. The deep psychological effects of this change result in a fundamental change in the minds of those who engage in these transactions. It tells a story that blurs the lines between sincere feeling and transactional communication, making the reader feel detached from the real meaning of closeness. People who interact in these ways could find it difficult to balance their emotional needs with the transactional nature of their relationships, which could cause emotional dissonance and internal conflicts. This commercialization distorts people's perceptions and conceptions of what meaningful connections are. It reinterprets intimacy, watering down its core and substituting a commercial mindset. This change in behavior and perception affects not only the close relationships in question but also the norms of society as a whole, affecting how people view and handle intimacy more broadly. Understanding these intricacies is essential to realizing the extensive repercussions of this commercialization. It casts doubt on traditional views of intimacy and causes one to consider the relative worth of emotional ties in terms of their intrinsic value. It emphasizes how important it is to approach this environment critically in order to discern between relationships that are shaped by economic principles, advertising tactics, and transactional dynamics, and those that are genuinely based on emotional ties. Differential treatment, a cloak of perception. Beauty is more than just surface level. It frequently functions as a subtle but potent force that greatly influences our interactions and interpersonal connections. It works like a mask, quietly permeating its influence into the social interactions we have. This invisible conductor sets the cadence of our exchanges, subtly affecting how we are viewed and handled by others. The social construct of beauty throws a big shadow over the dynamics of our relationships by affecting how people are viewed, interacted with, and ultimately received in different situations. Being attractive is more than just a superficial label, it's a social currency that influences relationships in the workplace, in the family, and in society at large. This view has the power to set the cadence and mood of interactions, which can have a cascading effect on the relationships themselves. People who are considered attractive are frequently given preference in social situations. They may discover that they are easily accepted into social circles, that people value their opinions more, and that people want to be around them. Attractiveness represents a prejudice that cuts beyond experience and credentials in professional settings, influencing salary negotiations, career promotions, and hiring decisions. Attractiveness can unintentionally influence family dynamics even in family settings, sometimes resulting in unequal treatment between siblings or other family members. These societal perceptions have significant psychological ramifications. People who conform to conventional beauty standards frequently feel more confident, positive, and validated by others. But this validation based on looks can start a vicious cycle that can lead to an over-reliance on outside approval and potentially undervaluing one's sense of self-worth when one's appearance changes or in circumstances where one's attractiveness is irrelevant. On the other hand, people who don't meet these standards could feel inadequate, left out of social situations, or ignored, which could negatively affect their mental health and self-worth. Relationships can be constructed on biased grounds due to these perceived differences in attractiveness, which calls into question the sincerity of bonds made in these situations. These societal perceptions have a variety of complex effects. Perceived beauty can lead to the formation of superficial relationships that are more motivated by outside forces than by true connection. It calls into question the sincerity of relationships and whether they are based on shared values, mutual understanding, and true emotional ties, or if they are only the product of societal norms and prejudices. This exploration calls into question the accepted understanding of true connections. It challenges reflection on the sincerity of partnerships forged in the shadow of perceived beauty. It challenges us to look for connections based on deeper, more meaningful foundations rather than surface-level norms, and forces us to reevaluate the extent to which societal perceptions affect our opinions and interactions. In the end, it challenges us to consider the sincerity of our relationships and exhorts us to look past prejudices and judgments from society in search of real and meaningful connections. Acceptance beyond conventions, pioneering new norms. There are relationships that challenge the status quo and break traditional paradigms within the inflexible bounds of societal norms and expectations. These partnerships, non-traditional unions, or cross-cultural relationships, serve as trailblazers who are redefining what it means to be accepted. Alternative perspectives on love, commitment, and companionship can be found in unconventional partnerships, which include navigating age gaps, non-monogamous arrangements, and relationships that do not conform to the traditional mold of romantic unions. These partnerships frequently defy social norms and spark discussions about the bounds and potential of intimacy and love. Because they frequently go beyond the bounds of conventional relationship dynamics, their existence alone challenges the societal norms that prescribe the right way to love and be in a relationship. They also force people to reevaluate their own personal beliefs, values, and expectations. These relationships can elicit a wide range of emotions in each person, including difficulties, happiness, doubts, and personal growth. They push people to examine various aspects of their identities, challenge preconceived beliefs, and rethink what intimacy and connection mean, encouraging us to venture outside of our comfort zones and preconceived conceptions. Challenging stereotypes, cultural biases, and prejudices help society's acceptance and understanding to grow. The psychological terrain of these relationships frequently entails striking a careful balance between social integration and self-discovery, promoting personal growth against the backdrop of cultural norms. Furthermore, these kinds of relationships have an impact on social interactions in addition to the individuals who are involved. They question accepted social mores and spark conversations about diversity, acceptance, and inclusivity. These partnerships act as a window reflecting the changing ideas about human connection, love, and commitment, which forces society to reevaluate strict norms and adopt a more flexible definition of relationships. These unconventional ties, all things considered, represent a complex web of social and psychological implications. They challenge accepted ideas about relationships, promote introspection, and push boundaries. Their influence extends from the private psyche to the general social consciousness, encouraging a path of introspection, comprehension, and development for people and society at large. Unraveling psychological threads, impact on hearts and minds. In the process of navigating these intersecting paths of personal stories, societal norms, and the commercialization of intimacy, we learn more about the psychological undercurrents that run through the hearts and minds of people who are involved in intimate relationships. This journey delves into the complex web of feelings, resiliency, struggles, and victories that shape our perception and experience of closeness. Intimate relationships are explored in detail in Chapter 2, which encourages readers to consider the social mirrors they look into, the personal stories they tell, and how a commercialized emotional landscape affects how they perceive intimacy. It's a journey through the nuances that mold our ties and stories, encouraging reflection on the psychological effects of these entwined strands that make up our relationship structure.